All right, we've got some big news for anyone with their eyes on IIM Rohtak's IPM program for 2026. The rules have just changed. So today, we're going to break down every single update to their admission policy so you know exactly what this means for you.
Seriously, if this is your goal, you're going to want to pay close attention. The whole admission process has gotten an overhaul, and we're about to walk through exactly what's different and, more importantly, why it matters for your application.
And just so we're clear, we're not talking about tiny little tweaks here. This is a pretty significant shift in how the whole admissions game is going to work. So let's dive right in and start with the biggest changes that are going to affect your prep strategy, like right now.
Okay, let's kick things off with the two major headline-grabbing policy changes. These are going to impact both your eligibility and your entire preparation strategy. You absolutely cannot afford to miss these.
So what's the big deal? Well, two huge things have changed. First off, the age limit for reserved categories, it's been relaxed. And second, and this one is a real game changer, the exam doesn't have sectional timings anymore. We're going to dig into what that means for you in just a sec.
Okay, so now that we've got those big changes on our radar, let's take a step back to the basics. We need to confirm you meet the fundamental academic and age requirements. Think of this as the very first gate you have to get through. First up, academics. The magic number here is 60%. You need to have scored at least 60% in both your 10th and 12th standards if you're in the general category. Now, for reserve categories, that's SC, ST, and PWD, there's a 5% relaxation, so the minimum mark drops to 55%.
All right, let's talk about that new age rule we mentioned. For general category candidates, the cap is 20 years old as of June 30th, 2026. But here's the really big news. For the first time ever, they've introduced a 5-year age relaxation for SC and ST candidates. That's huge! It seriously expands who is eligible to apply.
Okay, eligibility is sorted. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty or the exam itself, the IPM Aptitude test. We'll look at how this really builds your path to admission, because understanding the test structure is absolutely key to planning your prep.
So, the exam structure should look pretty familiar to you. It's still broken down into the 3 classic sections you need to nail: quantitative ability, logical reasoning, and verbal ability. And each section carries equal weight, with 40 questions each. And for those 120 questions, you get exactly 120 minutes. Yep, that's a pretty tight 1 minute per question average. But, and this is the important part, how you actually use those 120 minutes is where everything changes this year.
And here it is. This is the absolute game changer for 2026. Sectional timings are gone. You now have complete and total control over your 2 hours. So if you're a beast at quant and can fly through it, but you need a little more time for verbal, you can totally do that now. This is a massive strategic advantage, but only if you use it wisely.
Now, while the time management strategy has been turned on its head, the marking scheme hasn't changed a bit. So just remember, it's still +4 marks for every right answer, but you get a penalty of -1 for every wrong one. That means accuracy is still just as important as speed.
Okay, so let's say you ace the test. That's awesome, but clearing that written exam is really just the first major hurdle. So now, let's break down how your performance actually translates into a final admission offer.
The whole selection process is basically a 2-step journey. Stage 1 is all about that aptitude test. You have to do well enough to get shortlisted. And if you make the cut, then you move on to Stage 2, the personal interview.
So you might be wondering, how is that final score calculated? Well, take a look. The aptitude test is the biggest slice of the pie, a whopping 55%. But check this out. Your past performance is super important. Your 12th grade marks are worth 20%, and your 10th grade marks are 10%. Add that up, and a full 30% of your final score is already locked in from your report cards. Then, that all-important personal interview makes up the last crucial 15%.
And don't think that personal interview is just some casual chat. Nope, it's a proper offline assessment, and they're looking to evaluate 3 things: your academic knowledge, your general awareness of what's happening in the world, and, of course, your communication skills. Basically, you've got to show you're a well-rounded candidate. Okay, let's switch gears to logistics, the stuff every single applicant needs to know. We're going to map out the entire admission timeline so you can pull out your calendar and make sure you don't miss a single one of these critical deadlines.
All right, here it is, your roadmap for 2026. Get ready. The application window opens up on February 6th and closes on April 6th. The big day, the aptitude test itself, is on May 10th. And after that, things start moving really fast.
Interview calls go out in late May, with the actual interviews happening in early June. You'll know the final result by mid-July, just in time for the program to kick off in August.
And finally, let's talk about the investment. Because let's be real, understanding the financial commitment is a huge part of your decision. So let's break down the program fees.
It's pretty straightforward. For the first 3 years of the IPM program, the academic fee is consistent. You're looking at just over 6.2 lakh rupees per year.
So that brings the grand total for the academic fees for those first 3 years to approximately 18.6 lakh rupees. And just to be clear, this covers your tuition and other core academic costs.
But remember, that figure doesn't include everything. You'll also need to budget for other expenses. You know, things like study materials, some developmental fees, and your mess charges. And keep in mind, all of those are subject to change.
So, here's the bottom line. These new rules, especially the removal of sectional timing and that new age relaxation, they're not just small changes. They open up brand new opportunities and demand completely new strategies from applicants. So the real question is, how are you going to use them to your advantage?